My name's Christine Dye. I am a licensed clinical social worker and I'm a board member with Volunteer Guardianship 1-on-1. I'm here today to present resources. Resources can be very tricky, can be very difficult to navigate and find the resources that you need. We will be presenting two presentations back to back. One presentation will be about community resources for someone who might be financially challenged. The second presentation will include resources for someone who might have more financial ability. I'm here to tell you about Sue. I met Sue many years ago when I was an adult protective service worker. Sue was a single woman. She was divorced. She lived in senior apartments. She had a dog and she had a cat. Sue had a son who did not live locally and with whom she had no contact with for many years. Sue's story began with a referral to the Hunterdon County Division of Social Work Services, the Adult Protective Service Unit. She was referred for possible self-neglect. Adult Protective Services investigates potential reports of suspected abuse, neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable adults in the community age 18 and over. When I went to meet with Sue, I thought that I was going to meet with a very nice senior who was living independently as best she could. What I met with was someone who was very angry that I was at the door. Not only was she very angry, but she would not let me enter the home. During my initial visit, once I finally got in, it was clear that Sue was having some concerns. Sue's apartment was very cluttered. There was stuff like newspapers, checkbooks, magazines, all over the floor. It was a hazard to walk in her home. There were no paths. In order to get from point A to point B, you had to step on her belongings that were located on the floor. It was evident in talking with Sue that she had some memory concerns. Sue was unable to follow conversation at times. She couldn't tell you the date, the day of the week, and really wasn't up to date on current events. When I opened Sue's refrigerator, it was clear that she probably was not eating regularly. Though the refrigerator was packed with food, upon further investigation, you could tell that that was expired food. And when you looked at Sue's kitchen, there were dirty dishes everywhere that made you think that she was eating, but what they were dishes that had been there for quite some time. When you moved into Sue's bedroom, you could notice that all of her clothes were on the floor, on the dresser, on the bed. The clothes were no longer in the drawers where they belonged, and they were no longer hanging up. I also had concerns that Sue was not changing her clothing. Her clothes were very stained, and she would frequently have the same outfit on during my visits. The first thing I did with Sue was to get her some help in her home. I wanted to make sure that she could bathe regularly, that she was eating regularly, and that she was being able to get clean clothes. So I went to Hunterdon Healthcare, Visiting Health and Supportive Services. Visiting Health and Supportive Services as of September 2020 is no longer operating as they did back then. But through Visiting Health and Supportive Services, I was able to get the perfect aide for Sue. Her aide not only was tough when she needed to be, but also was compassionate when she needed to be. In addition, her aide had a husband at home with dementia already. So she understood what we were dealing with in Sue's home, and they became really best buds. The second thing I put in for Sue was Hunterdon Helpline. As it turned out, not only was Sue forgetting to eat, forgetting to shower, but when it was very hot. We had a really hot summer one year, and it was high 90s a lot of the time. She was forgetting to turn on her air conditioner. So when I would go to visit her, she'd be very clammy, she'd be very hot. It was like 95 degrees in her apartment, and that's unhealthy and unsafe. So we made a referral to Hunterdon Helpline, where they only not called her and checked on her 3 times a day to make sure she was doing okay, but when there was excessive heat, they reminded her to turn on her air conditioner. They also reminded her to take her medication, as Sue was forgetting to do that on a regular basis as well. So Hunterdon Helpline was able to be my eyes and my ears when I could not be there. So what happened is if they called Sue and they didn't get her, after an hour they called me. So then we'd go over and check on her. Or if they called Sue and said, you know what, she's just not sounding right, they'd give me a call and we'd go over and check on her. So it was my lifeline to almost being there every day, but not physically having to be there every day. The next step we did is we got Sue what's called a geriatric assessment. This was also through the Hunterdon healthcare system, the Hunterdon Center for Healthy Aging. So Sue met with a geriatrician who provided an evaluation. Asked Sue questions like, what day is it? What year is it? Put her through a battery of tests that lasted a couple hours. In addition to questioning Sue, they also had me come in to see what I was seeing throughout the day. At the end, Sue was diagnosed with dementia. The physician at the time said that dementia was fairly progressed, and he thought that she'd probably only be able to remain in the community for another year. I'd like to say early on that was sad for me, because over the time I really got to enjoy Sue. No longer did I have an angry person when I showed up. She was one of my favorite people to go visit. So I was really upset that in a year we might not be able to keep Sue in the community. However, through Sue helping us out and through all these services that I'm going to go through, just to give you a little caption at the end, Sue made it 5 years in the community. And that to me was a great success story. The next thing we did was we signed Sue up for a program that at that time was called the CAP program, Caregiver Assistance Program. That program has now changed names a couple times and is now called Mltss, Managed Long-Term Support Services. This is a Medicaid waiver program. There is a two-pronged process to becoming eligible for this program. There is a clinical assessment that is done through the state, through a pre-admission screening nurse, and then there is a financial piece, the Medicaid piece, that is done through the Board of Social Services. However, most of the time you can start by calling two places, either the Hunterdon County Board of Social Services to start your Medicaid application, or you can call Division of Senior Disability and Veteran Services. They will do the initial screen to determine whether your person might be eligible for this program. Mltss is a wonderful program because it pays to have services in the home. So it would pay to have a home health aide. It would pay to go to a social adult day center. It would pay for Meals on Wheels. So it paid for the services that we needed to keep Sue safe in the home. Once Sue had Mltss, we began to put more services in place. One of the services we put in place was Meals on Wheels. This was a great service because Sue would get a hot meal at lunch. She got her lunch Monday through Thursday. Friday she went elsewhere, and she got a bag lunch for Saturday. Not only did she get a hot meal that was nutritious and would help ensure that she had the food when she needed it to eat, but she also gave her a welfare check. So when they went to deliver the meal, if Sue wasn't there, I got a call saying something might be up. So not only now do I have helpline checking on her, but I also have Meals on Wheels, which is also giving another check. Then we set Sue up with Brightside Adult Day Center. This is also through the Hunterdon healthcare system. Sue would go every Friday. Her aide would come in the morning, we'd get her dressed, would put her on the Link bus, and off she'd go to Brightside, where she was able to enjoy a day of socialization, which is very important because when Sue wasn't at Brightside, she stayed home in her apartment. She did have a couple close friends at her senior building, and they did tend to get together every now and then, but as Sue's dementia progressed, that happened less and less. So Brightside became her social outlet. Link Transportation was the one that took Sue to and from Brightside. So like I said, her aide would put her on the bus, and then when Sue got home, she was able to find her way back to her apartment. Next, it was time to get Sue a guardian. Because the doctor felt that Sue lacked the capacity to make financial decisions and govern her own life, we needed to find a guardian that would do that for her. So we went to court. The judge felt that Sue needed a guardian, and here came in volunteer guardianship one-on-one. Also, she got the most perfect guardian. Just like her home health aide, she got a guardian that knew when to be tough and show the tough love, and she got one that knew when to be pulled back and show the softer side. So in the end, we had success. Sue did not have to be institutionalized after 1 year. Sue got to stay 5 years in her home with her dog and with her cat, with her friends, because of all the services we put in place. And ultimately, the thing that tied that all together was her guardian. Her guardian stayed with her for many years. Eventually, Sue did have to leave her apartment, where she went to an assisted living and eventually went to a nursing home. But it wasn't in 1 year. To me, that is a great success. And all these programs put together that are community programs out there that anyone can call and be screened for was the key, along with her guardian, to letting Sue live the best life possible. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Kellogg. I'm a licensed social worker with Nightingale NJ Elder Care Navigators. I'd like to share with you today on behalf of Volunteer Guardian, John's story. I'd like to be able to talk to you about his journey and how, because he had some finances, be able to better utilize the services in the community and offer him his power, control, dignity, and peace of mind for him and his adult daughter. When do we ever consider ourselves old? We never will. Trick question. But what we need to be able to do is that we plan. We plan for things. We plan to get married. We plan to buy a house. We plan for our kids to go to college, and we save. We need to plan for substantial changes in our world. We were contacted by Amy, John's daughter. John was 95 years old, is 95 years old. He was a fiercely independent person, never wanted any type of assistance. Amy was on the other side of the country with her own medical challenges. They had their own little sequences and routines. Every day, she would call John to make sure he was okay, until the one day he never received the call. So we were called. It turned out that John was sent to the emergency room. John had suffered a stroke. We were able to gather information that Amy had and be able to be her eyes, ears, boots on the ground. John's insight waxed and waned. There was really touch and go moments, being able to support Amy and help her understand as a social worker what is said, what it means, and how it applies to her now, and more importantly for John, for his needs, not to speak for him, but to amplify his voice. Eventually, John became a little bit more stable. We were able to look at him being able to leave, but we couldn't just look at the here and now. We had to be able to look at the future, because if we look at the here and now exclusively, we're already a step behind. Being able to work with the clinical staff in the hospital so that we can find not a place, but the best place for him to receive his subacute rehab, where that he can receive physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, have the experts be able to come there, be able to utilize the STAR system through CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to give him the highest level of care, to give him the best likelihood to be able to get back to his prior level of functioning. We went and we toured different places. We, in real time, showed Amy around, took pictures, because again, John's ability to focus would go in and out. We wanted to make sure that when he was able to get there, everything that he needed to was there. All of the clothing. He wasn't going to stay in the gowns. His favorite shirt, his favorite sweatshirts, his blankets, pictures to make him feel that his environment worked for him, so he didn't have to work for his environment. Being able to, again, share with the clinical team there what his environment looked like. The steps, the bathroom to get in, how low the toilet seat is, how tall the bed that he currently has in. So all goals were able to be tailor-made just to John's needs. With great progress, John was able to get stronger. We monitored his progress while he was at the rehab. We went to the care plan meetings, having weekly visits, being able to not just look at John on his great days, but also at his lower level, because when it's times to go home, that's what he wanted. We need to make sure that he had always enough help for him. And the hard thing is, John's function fluctuated quite a bit. He had good days, he had bad days. He had good moments and bad moments of functional, cognitive, and also emotional. It was a major change for John, having outside services go to the rehab, but also having supportive goals for that team to aspire to, and be able to have John keep the eyes on the prize so that he's able to go back. We made sure that his environment worked for him. We reached out to the task man, a local handyman, to be able to finish up all of the odds and ends projects that were in the house. The leaky water tank, making sure that the faucets, anything that had to get done was done, giving him a nice foundation. Having a group called Back Home Safely that specialize in adaptive devices, having a bed, having a specialized shower, having ramps, grab bars, a Hoyer lift for his lowest level of functioning in place so that we can minimize the risk of him having a change of status and having to go back into the system was in order. We maintained vigilance with John, keeping him in control, keeping him focused, making sure that we are aware, making sure that his daughter is understanding what is going on. It was decided that even with the adaptive devices, we needed to make sure that he had an aid there. John's functioning status, again, waxed and waned. There was a risk of silent aspiration, meaning that he needed to have specialized food there, needed to have thickened liquids, needing to have chopped diet. We screened an aid so that there's as little on-job training that you need. You want to make sure, has that person worked with a person that had a stroke, that's familiar with the little idiosyncrasies, and then making sure that their personalities matched, making sure that their environment worked for them. On that day, we made sure that John had all of his favorite food there that was able to be monitored by the dietitian, making sure that the visiting nurses are going to go out, making sure that the aide and the nurse that monitors the aide through that agency is aware. She's had education by the speech and the dietitian at the rehab, so knows exactly what the consistency needs to be, how much thickener needs to go into each and every single drink so we can keep him safe. We made sure that his environment worked for him. We had the nurse be able to come out to make sure that all the medications were in the cassettes so that there wasn't any assessments needing to go on, and having on-call nursing for him at all time if there was ever little changes that we could swoop in and be able to report off to the doctor immediately. Arranging transportation so that John was able to get home via stretcher, making sure insurance was able to pay for that. We wanted to make sure that home is where the heart is. When he arrived home, he was able to see the welcome home side. We had his daughter on the line. We had the aide there. Everybody was understanding a care plan so that John's wishes, his idiosyncrasies, getting up, going to the bathroom, being able to get cleaned up, sitting at the table, having his breakfast, so that John knows what to anticipate, to be able to establish that holding environment for him to be able to have the idea of what's next, but also making sure that the aide knew what to follow to give her the handles, to be able to keep John's environment working for him and give her that ability to best manage him. We were there to make sure that the visiting nurses that came out through insurance, physical therapy, occupational therapy, continued, had the background, not just the clinical notes, but the verbal explanation of this is the timeline, this is the change, this was his past medical status. These were the hang-ups that they had before. What can we do to continue working so that now that he is home, his environment works for him, doing the transfers, being able to have bed mobility, having follow-up doctors in place so that now that John's home, he goes back to his primary doctor, having the transportation set up. making sure that Amy, the daughter, is aware through all of this. Then COVID came. There was no more playbook, but having a team on your side to help you understand what is said, what it means, and how it applies to you, and thinking outside the box. Just because the front door is locked, where else? How are we going to get inside? The back door, the windows, the chimney. Make the environment work for you. We set up all telehealth appointments just because, rightfully so, we had to limit the risk of COVID. We also may need to make sure that all of these chronic conditions that John had was monitored regularly, having the home visits, having the blood draws. Make the environment work for you, utilizing outside services and being able to maintain the available and advocacy. So if it's important to him, it's important for the rest of the team, and making sure that Amy was involved and she understands what's important. Honoring his wishes. What's important? What was the thing that was most important to him? What was the thing that he wanted to get done? What was his pleasure of that day? He still loved Jeopardy. He enjoyed being able to not just look at the newspaper, but sometimes she would read that to keep up on current events. Making sure to have friends come over, scheduling something to look forward to every single day so you have purpose. When you have purpose, you have control, you have dignity, you have peace of mind. Being able to make sure that his voice is always heard. Just because Amy is available and loves him doesn't always mean that the family is always the first person to be able to do this. Having the ability to maintain that role. She as a daughter, not as the primary caregiver, but also having that peace of mind that all of his needs are being managed so that his voice was being heard, and be able to make sure she's aware of what is next coming on is really what we did. He's home and he did very, very well for a very long time until having another change of status that he went into a nursing home, but we still monitor him and everyone is aware, and having those check-ins so he's not alone and not speaking for him but amplifying his voice. So again, if it's important to him, it's important to his team around him at all times. My name's Kellogg. Thank you very much for this opportunity and have a good day.